I have a dream. America remembers its freedoms. That's the topic of today's Bold and Blunt. And I'm your host, Cheryl Chumley, giving you a Christian conservative look at today's news, politics, culture, and events. Wouldn't it be great if America suddenly awakened, I think that's the word, awakened from its collective slumber and saw the perils to our freedom and said, you know what? We're going to recapture, we're going to reclaim, we're going to get back our God-given individual liberties. And all the cockroaches that came out of the corners, the dark, dark shadows in recent years to steal and seize those liberties, scurried back into their corners, buried deep into the sand for another 100, 200 years or so. I have a dream that could really happen. And before I get into all that, I want to quickly mention that if you like Bold and Blunt, you may get Bold and Blunt at edify.app, the online platform for your faith-based podcast at washingtontimes.com. Please go there, subscribe to my newsletter, scroll to the bottom of the page, click on the newsletter section, and find Bold and Blunt with Cheryl Chumley. That's me. Click on it, enter your email address, and like that, faster than you can say Bold and Blunt, you will be subscribed to my Monday, Wednesday, Friday newsletter, which contains my commentaries that I write at the Washington Times. But that's not all. You also get my Tuesday and Thursday Bold and Blunt podcast. You don't want to miss Bold and Blunt because I have the best guests. Yes, I do. I know I'm a little bit biased, but I'm not lying. Would I lie? No, I wouldn't lie. But if you don't want to go through all that, you know what? Go to Spotify, go to iTunes, go to Bing, Google, type in Bold and Blunt with Cheryl Chumley, and subscribe to my podcast, which is available anywhere podcasts are offered. There's some really cool sites out there that offer my podcast that also have all these subscribers who have weighed in with their opinions. And I'm happy to say Bold and Blunt is regularly rated 4.5 out of 5 stars. And you know that half is the trolls. They just go on any conservative site and they automatically click 1 star, 1 star, 1 star. That's their role in life, to robotically click 1 star, 1 star, 1 star. And they feel like they're weighing in on the public discourse. Anyhow, back to Bold and Blunt's topic of today, which, as I said, I have a dream. I have a dream America will wake up and see, not just see and acknowledge all the perils to freedom, all the losses of freedom that we've suffered, really dramatically under Barack Obama, right? The pen and cell phone president. I have a pen, I have a cell phone. Who needs Congress? Who needs the Constitution? I'm going to fundamentally change the foundations of America because I am Barack Obama. And he did, right? He did. He got us all conditioned. Well, he got the sheep in America conditioned to believe that it was the executive's job. And by executive, I mean the president, right? Because you know the 3 branches of government: legislative, judicial, executive. I know you already know that, but there may be some people out there who are Democrats who happen to be tuning into Bold and Blunt, and they're like, executive? A businessman? No, the executive level, the executive branch, the president. And he bragged about changing the foundations of America, and I gotta say, he did a pretty good job of it, right? He got us all conditioned to believe that it was the executive's job to push laws and legislation, which it's not. That's why you have legislators, thus the legislative branch. But the executive is basically, if you go back and you read history, right, the executive has a balance of powers with the judiciary and the legislative branches. The executive is not a king, but Barack Obama came in and acted like a king. And if you dared criticize him, then his friends in the media, his fawners and worshipers in the media would dutifully weigh in and call you a racist. And so that's pretty much how it went for 4 years and then another 4 years. And he got by with a lot of stuff that was pretty unconstitutional. And then came Donald Trump, and he reeled all that back, and then the globalists cried, no, everything's being undone. We have to take down Trump. And then we had 4 years of Russia collusion and accusations and allegations. And it was funniest to me when they went after an impeachment against Donald Trump when he was not in the White House anymore. First, they called for impeachment before he was even inaugurated. Go back in time, check the history on this. It was a little bit hilarious, right? And then they wanted to impeach him when he was out of the office. I mean, quite possibly Donald Trump is the only American citizen, free citizen, who was targeted for impeachment without even holding an office. Think about it. A little bit crazy, but that is the Democrat Party today. I want to play you something.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
Good speech, right? Good speech containing some good principles that unite, not divide, or that should unite, not divide. Well, let me play you something else.
What is it that gentlemen wish? What would they have? Is life so dear, or peace so sweet, as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God. I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death.
Another great speech, right? Another great speech containing great principles, right? So let me play you one more thing.
It was we, the people, not we, the white male citizens, nor yet we, the male citizens, but we, the whole people who formed the Union. And we formed it not to give the blessings of liberty, but to secure them. Not to the half of ourselves and the half of our posterity, but to the whole people, women as well as men. And it is a downright mockery to talk to women of their enjoyment of the blessings of liberty, while they are denied the use of the only means of securing them provided by this democratic Republican government, the ballot.
Three very different speeches at three very different moments in American history by three very different people. The first, of course, Martin Luther King Jr., a black man, right? His famous I Have a Dream speech about freedom and justice, regardless of skin color. The second, a reading of his speech believed to have been Patrick Henry's famous speech, Give Me Liberty or Give Me Death, delivered at a time where the British Navy was assembling against America, and he was trying to rouse his fellow citizens to understand and acknowledge that war had already begun, and it was time to fight for freedom. It was time to recognize that freedom and liberty was about to be stripped from them, and the war had already begun. Get in the battle. Fight for individual freedoms. And the third, a reading of a speech from Susan B. Anthony on the quest for women's vote, right? Suffrage. She delivered the speech in 1873 before court after being arrested for casting what was considered back then an illegal vote because women didn't have the right to vote. Again, her tone, her theme was essentially the same as the other two speakers, the quest for individual freedom. Isn't it interesting that no matter the skin color, no matter the sex, no matter the time in history, no matter the year, no matter the circumstance, the basic ideals of freedom and liberty and individualism always stay the same, right? In that, we are united. People in America, people around the world who quest for the same liberty are all fighting the same battle. And that's a unifying principle. It makes the battle clear, right? We are fighting for individualism. We are fighting for liberties as recognized and given by God. We are fighting for the American exceptionalism called God-given liberty. And so all these other little wars that go on, all these other skirmishes in the culture, in the economy, in the school systems, in the culture, they're all focused on the same larger war, right? God-given individual liberties. And in order to win in the end against the enemies who would strip us of our God-given individual liberties, the socialists, the progressives, the communists, the Marxists who have infiltrated America's Democrat Party, right? The Democrat Party itself is a representation of communism now. In order to win against all these forces, all we have to do is recognize it's one battle we're fighting here. It's one battle against evil, right? For the side of God. Because God not only represents love and truth, but also freedom. So that's all we have to remember here. And we have to do a better job in America of selling the dream of freedom, of selling the idea that it's a unifying principle. It's not divisive like the left would like to represent, because that serves the left's devices and designs. The left wants to divide and conquer, so the left doesn't like unifying principles like liberty. But as these three speeches show, from three very different people of different skin colors, different sexes, different times in history, the fight for individual liberty always unites. It's always the right fight to make. And I have a guest today, Kelly John Walker. He is a freedom fighter who hosts his own show, his own podcast. He sometimes fills in for television shows discussing American principles of freedom and so forth. And he looks to unite, not divide, which is exactly what we need in this very hot political and culture called America right now. We need people who speak to the greater spirit of America, the one that draws us together in the fight against evil forces, the ones who can actually sell the dream of America. Kelly, thank you so much for being on Bold and Blunt. It is really great to have you here.
Absolutely, Cheryl. Thanks for having me.
So we follow each other on Twitter, and you and I share a couple of things, a love for America and a concern about the direction America is taking. What do you see as the biggest threats facing America right now?
Oh, gosh, there are so many. You know, I've written a lot about the Chinese Communist Party infiltrating the U.S., and I think that's a very big threat, but really that couldn't exist without the compliance and the cooperation of people within our government. The Department of Justice is infiltrated, our education systems, every institution in this country has been infected with Marxism, with woke ideology, and you know, it's hard to pin it to one thing, but essentially, I think the greatest danger is ourselves right now. We have to be remembering who we are, remembering that Marxism and communism, that communism is the most dangerous ideology. It's killed more people than any other ideology over the 20th century.
It's interesting you talk about the need to remember who we are, that we are our own worst enemies, because especially in a nation like America where we are the government, that is just oh so true. And I just wonder your thoughts on this. Do you think that conservatives do enough to sell the dream? We're pretty good about pointing out the problems, but the dream of America, what makes it so great? Do you think we could do a better job on that?
I do, honestly. I mean, I see a lot of sort of talking about liberal tears and making fun of things and attacking, and there is a place for some of that at times, but more than that, we have to provide something better. We have to show that there is a better way, and that's why I created Freedom Talk. And all that we're doing, we want to show people the roots of their rights, show them why they need to believe in American principles and how it's going to help their lives. And we say, think like a patriot. Patriot has kind of gotten a bad rap lately. It's kind of a pejorative term, but what we want to show is that what we're talking about, what we're teaching, comes from thousands of years of human development, a whole lot of wisdom, a whole lot of understanding of human nature. And I just said on my show the other day, if you hold out your arm in front of you and you say that the length of my arm is human history, the woke revolution is the fingernail. It hasn't been around for long. So we have thousands of years of precedence of humanity rising up and finding its ultimate expression in the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. Not that we got it perfect to begin with. You know, I believe it was Martin Luther King Jr. who called it the Great Promissory Note. But we have to show people that what we have here is superior to these new progressive ideas, which really aren't that new. They're sort of repackaged.
One of the dangerous principles that I think has really crept into the consciousness, especially of the younger generations, is a failure to recognize that nothing worth having comes easy, right? That's something that, our mothers told us when we were growing up and we would roll our eyes. But how true is that principle? And talk about how that principle being forgotten has really helped bring America to this perilous time.
Sure, and it's not just an American principle. I mean, you go back to Greece, you have a certain rigor and strength, the idea that you have to protect your polis or your city. You had the Romans, you had people like Marcus Aurelius, who taught a sort of a difficult life, or as Theodore Roosevelt called it, the strenuous life. But you also have other cultures like James Kawikla, who is quoted in a book that I really like, which is called Recollections of a Warm Springs Apache, says that it's not too good to have too easy of a life. It makes you soft and ineffective. So America really did rise up from this idea that you live the strenuous life, you apply yourself, you work hard, you take on challenges, and ultimately that builds up the inner person. But if things are too easy, if everything's given to us, we become weak, and it's not good for our character. It's like going into the gym and expecting to get strong by watching other people lift weights. And ultimately, I think, this song that's come out recently, Richmond, north of Richmond, he's expressing something that a lot of people feel, because the people who don't want to work, who want the easy life, are living off the backs of the people who are working hard, and it just makes it harder for them. In that exchange, I think the people who are working hard, even though they're feeling oppressed, and justifiably so, they're gaining immense rewards in character. So out of the two of them, I'd rather be the one carrying the burden, because it would make me stronger.
Yeah, because out of struggle comes success, right? If it were easy, everybody would do it. And, I look back on the movement in America, too, the self-esteem movement, where teachers would pat you on the head just for completing your homework, which is something you're supposed to do anyhow, or the participation trophies and so forth. And it just seems like we have created this monster of entitlement in America, which, in my view, is going to be very difficult to unwind, because we're talking generations now.
Yeah, it's true, and there's a certain stoicism you need to have toward life. I have 5 kids, and I remember my 2 eldest sons, when they were younger, they'd fall off the bike and skin the knee. Of course, I'd go up and hug them and comfort them, but then I'd say, get back up on the bike. You cried enough. It's okay to be sad, but you can't stay there. Get back up on the bike and ride. And I'll tell you, in their adulthood now, early adulthood, that served them well, because they realize when challenge comes my way, I'm not going to buckle. I'm not going to go find a safe space. I'm going to take some time to, take the punch, adjust to it, get up off the floor, and get going again. And there's nothing more valuable than that, because we cannot make the entire world into a safe space. It's just never going to be that. There's always going to be danger. There's always going to be challenge and struggle, but we need to embrace that struggle. I mean, that's what makes us strong. Again, why would you go to a gym trying to work out and get a good body and then not lift weights, not challenge yourself? We need that in life.
And then the peril, I think, getting back to what we initially opened with, is when now Democrats swoop in, who have been taken over by socialists and communists and Marxists, right? We don't have JFK Democrats anymore. We don't even have Bill Clinton Democrats anymore. So it's this Democrat Party that swoops in and exploits this change in mindset of the younger generations, only fueling the difficulties and challenges that we face as America, trying to come back to these times of greatness.
Yeah, absolutely. And, this is where we can really come together, because people, they like to throw out terms and buzzwords, far right, alt right, all those things. I don't like those labels, but this is somewhere we can come together, because no less than Malcolm X talked about the white liberal who pretends to be a friend of, as he would say, the blacks, but uses that as a weapon against the conservative. And we've seen that even with BLM. The Democrats were bowing the knee and doing all those things. But then later on, some of the leaders of the BLM were complaining, saying, hey, they used us. They used us for their own purposes. They used us as a weapon against the other side, and now they've abandoned us. Well, Malcolm X said that, 60 years ago or something. And this is where we can come together. It's really interesting, Cheryl, because I wrote a paper on my Substack, and then Nick Natoli from the Boycott Target song, we did a show on it, on our new Freedom Talk Counterculture show. And we looked at the Maury County Courthouse where Jason Aldean filmed his video, and people had brought up the fact that a young man had been killed and then his body was hung from the courthouse. So I researched that and I looked into it, and I found out some very surprising things. And to make a long story short, it wasn't black versus white. The mob who came and took him were Democrats. The KKK was a militant arm of the Democratic Party at that time. And the people who stood up for the young man, the 18-year-old boy who was killed, were black and white. In fact, the mother of the girl who was allegedly assaulted by the young man, she couldn't identify him for certain if it was him. The white mother of the girl who had been assaulted stood up for the young man. And you go back and you see there was this history of the Democrat Party using fear and intimidation, sowing division. They stole elections. And what blew my mind, Cheryl, was I found out that at that time, this is 100 years ago, the black and white people of the community, the farmers, the rural folk, the average people, they tried to form a populist party. They were tired of being bullied and persecuted, and black and white came together. And guess what happened? After they stood up to the Democrats, the KKK, started hanging black and white people. So you look at history differently and you say, hey, these were people who got along together, who saw one another as human beings, who tried to rise up out of that. And I truly believe, look, I believe there are some Democrats who are very well-meaning. I think RFK Jr. is one of those. Mm-hmm. But I think there are still these families that have been around for a long time who hold on to power and who are still using minority communities as a weapon. And what I see in the MAGA movement is people of all races, all colors, all backgrounds coming together and saying, hey, we all love families, we all love freedom, we want to get along. I was on a Lyft ride from the airport this weekend, and I was in the car with a Hispanic man. And, this was in the Austin area, so I didn't know where he stood. But at one point when we were talking, he said, I hate to admit it, but I'm a Trump supporter. I said, hey, man, that's great, I said, I didn't know because you're Hispanic, and I thought maybe you're a Democrat. I speak fluent Spanish, by the way, but he just told me about, hey, I grew up Democrat, my mom was Democrat, but we're seeing things now. My mom has changed from that. He said, I am all about, I think Donald Trump is the best for the country. And I don't think, in terms of the person, but it's more of a movement where people are saying, look, we don't care what your color, your background is. We have more in common and more the same than we have different. And it's beautiful to see that.
It is, and I think on the conservative side of things, we all have stories where we've come across what we think are surprising conservatives or even more surprising Trump supporters, and we get this little jolt of optimism for our country. And then we get brought right back into the darkness when we see polls suggesting that younger generations embrace socialism or parents' rights are being rapidly stripped from them. And then you look at the LGBTQ lunacy and so forth. And just to wrap up here, because you gave really an optimistic outlook with that. But just to wrap up, Kelly, where do you see 2024 elections taking us? Certainly you must see this as growing divisiveness in America. Where do you see us going after the next presidential election?
Yeah, I think whoever ends up in office next is going to have an uphill battle because they've got a significant portion of the nation going contrary to them. But I think even more important than who's in the presidential office, and it is very, very important, is what we are doing as individuals, what we're doing as people, reaching out to one another, being community. And I truly think that the media, that some of the power brokers, they really exaggerate the division. They control the airwaves. They try to make it look like we hate each other. But what I experience, and I'm living in the South now, I've lived all over the country, but I just don't see the hatred. I see it on TV. I hear about it. But when I'm out in the community, it's very rare. Most people get along. Most people, black or white, they smile at each other's kids. They say, how you doing? How's your day? So honestly, common law, which our country is based on, came up from the people. We don't look at, as Americans, we don't look at the law as coming down from the government. Unfortunately, it's been doing that too much. We have to, as the grassroots, have government be downstream of what we're doing. So we're going to have to fight to come together. We're going to have to fight to throw off these oppressors who are trying to divide us, learn to live with one another's differences, be truly tolerant. You can't be tolerant if you agree with everything somebody else is saying. We have to learn to be one people again and work this out, because ultimately a president can only do so much. So maybe that's an optimistic message. I look at it as just some real hard work that's ahead of us, but let's get to it.
Well, that goes toward what we discussed at the outset about selling the dream of America. And so I applaud you. I applaud you because that's taking the hard road, but the one that really will have the long-lasting change for the better in America. Kelly John Walker, where can people watch your show? Where can they find the links to it and so forth?
Sure. The easiest place is to go online at realfreedomtalk.com, and you'll find everything there. You'll find links to the video show, to the podcast, to some of the written materials we have. And then be sure and catch me and Nick Natoli on our new show, Counterculture, and that also you can find at realfreedomtalk.com, because we're interviewing people like Forgiato Blow, Bryson Gray, Marine Rapper. We've got, you can call him Steve from the Babylon Bee, Siaka Masakoi. Just a whole lot of people who are cultural influencers, and we're talking to them and trying to bring together the great American values so that the young people you talk about and the people of all ages have alternatives, like really good music, good acting to choose from, so that they can have something that's positive. Like Nick said, good is the new badass. So be sure to catch that.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Kelly, for being on Bold and Blunt.
Thank you, Cheryl.
I will
look
see
forward to having you on my show as well.
Yes, and I'll see you on Twitter. Thank you.
Great. Okay.
And another great Bold and Blunt guest. If you're a conservative and you're retired, Republican Metals believes you need to protect that savings now. Currency change is coming. Call Republican Metals, 1-800-783-3118. That's 800-783-3118. I want to thank you for listening to Bold and Blunt. Remind you may get Bold and Blunt at edify.app, at washingtontimes.com, where you may also subscribe to my 3 times a week newsletter containing my commentaries, as well as my twice weekly Bold and Blunt podcast, which you can also get anywhere podcasts are offered. Yes, anywhere. Check it out. Spotify, Apple, iTunes, what have you. Tune in next time. And in the meanwhile, stay blunt, stay bold.